Hey everybody, welcome to part 5 in our series on making a custom ribbon in Microsoft Access. In this video we're going to discuss adding custom images and labels to our custom ribbon. We're going to continue to work with the custom ribbon we built in parts 1 through 4 of this series, and that includes this Home tab. It has these several buttons and these built-in groups, and also this Maintenance tab with these two custom groups. But before we do that, we need to talk about the types of images we might want to use on our ribbon. If you notice, the images that Microsoft builds into the ribbon have a transparent background. Right? You can change the color of your ribbon and the background still does not show. So if you're going to provide custom images for your ribbon, if you want them to blend in and not stand out as looking different or amateur, it's probably a good idea that they also have a transparent background. So let's talk about the types of images that we can put on our ribbon. Now the ribbon will take GIFs and JPEGs, PNGs, and bitmaps. However, if you want that transparent background, you'll need to limit yourself to the PNGs or the bitmaps. Just make sure that they do indeed have a transparent background. Now as far as the size of the image is concerned, that depends on the resolution of your display. At the time I'm writing this, most displays are using 32 by 32 as a large image and 16 by 16 for the small. However, they could go as far as 64 by 64 for the large and 32 by 32 for the small. And as we saw in a previous video in this series, the ribbon downsizes images much better than it upsizes them. So it's probably a better idea to start building your larges as 64 64 and your smalls as 32 by 32. Now there are a couple tools on the market that can help you deal with images on your ribbons. In fact, some of those tools will build the entire ribbon XML for you, and they'll take care of storing the images in an image store in Access or help you store them in a database. Now we're not going to do any of that. We're going to continue on with the XML that we've built by hand, and we're going to work with images from our folder structure on our hard drive. Let's take a quick look at our database one more time. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to add another group to the left of this group 1. It's going to have a button and a label on it. And then we're also going to work with this compact and repair button again and dynamically hide or show it. So first let's open our form, which is bound to our uses ribbons table. Remember, the uses ribbons table is the table that holds the XML for our ribbon. And we're going to copy in that new group. I'm going to put it right here. Alright, we're going to call the group. The group ID is going to be application. Remember, every ID in the ribbon has to be unique. We're going to give it a label though. We're going to call it our super app. And this first group is a group that I often do when I build custom ribbons. I like to put a label in the left hand corner that holds the name of the application. This is a way to identify the application, and often I will put up there as well the user ID of the person that's logged in. Especially when you're developing a database for a large customer that might have a large network, it's nice to be able to show the user ID up there as well. If you're working with a large place and they have several versions of the database, maybe 1 or 2 test versions and then a live or production version, I almost always will put a label up there that tells them which version they're in. Because quite frankly, it can be confusing sometimes for a user who is testing changes for you but also has actual work to do for their job, and they might actually be flipping back and forth between a test version in the morning and a production version in the afternoon, or vice versa. And it's nice to give them an indication up there at the top, a little reminder of which one they're in. So there are a variety of ways to do that. I usually feed that from a table. Usually I build split databases, so we'll have a test back end and a production back end, and then that label will hit that table and it'll tell it and display which version they're in. So looking at what we just added, we added a group. We added we have a very good name for our little test database here, so I call it our super app. That'll be the label that goes at the bottom of the group, and I've added one button right now to that group, and I'm calling it app icon. That's the ID. Okay, and in place of where we had image MSO to give us the built-in images, we're going to give it a custom image, and the way we do that is we use the get image attribute, and again we put a string in here, which is the name of a VBA method that we will call. And I've made this a large button. So let's change records to save that in the database and head over to our code window. So here's the getImage callback method that we're going to call from that getImage attribute on the ribbon. It takes two parameters. It takes a control, whichever control was clicked, right? Or whichever control is calling the getImage, and it also returns an image. So what we want to first do is resolve where our images are, and let's talk about that really quickly. I said that we would be working with images from our folder structure, so let's take a look. What I've done is I've put a subfolder inside of the folder where our database resides. So you can just make that as, if you want to use this method, you can use that as a rule that I'm going to have this folder structure within my database. Okay, so what we're doing then over here in the code is I'm getting the path to where the database is, and I'm going to append to it that subfolder name, DB images. Remember to add this backslash here, so we put all that in this string variable, string path. Then we're going to test the ID property of the control that called this method, and if it is equal to appIcon, we're going to set the image equal to the VBA load picture method, giving it the full path plus the name of the image we want, infocircle32.bitmap. Now you don't have to hard code it this way if you don't want. Of course, you can hold the entire path if you want to the image in a database table somewhere and get at it that way. How you get at it is up to you. I'm taking the simple route here for the example. I'm going to save this. And in order to reload our ribbon, of course, we have to close our database and then reopen it. Here we go. Let's take a look. All right, now we have our new group to the left. Notice that it sized itself to at least fit that label, our super app. And then there is our new button. It's got nice transparency. I was about to say it has nice transparency around it, but really it has nothing around it, which is what we want to see. So that's good. So the purpose of this button, I know this blue eye means nothing to us, but normally I've built some sort of custom image that somehow reflected the nature of the database, and that would be kind of like the icon for the database, and that's what I would put in this upper left-hand corner. And in this case, I'm just putting a blue circle with an eye in it just to show an example of some sort of image. So next I want to put a label to the right of this image that will hold the username of the person that's logged in to the computer or the network. So let's go back into our useless ribbons table, and we're going to copy in a label control in the same group, which is this guy right here. There we go. So label control, we give it an ID. I'm just calling it user ID. And here we want to load this dynamically as well. We don't want to hard code the username, right? So we're going to use the getLabel attribute and give it a string of a VBA method that will figure out who's logged in to the computer or the database. Get username ribbon. Okay, so let's take a look at the VBA we're going to be calling from the ribbon. I've got a very simple method here, get username ribbon. Again, it takes a control from the ribbon as input and it passes back a label. So we're setting a label equal to a string here, user colon 2 spaces, a couple spaces. And I'm using this very easy method here, environ, and then username in double quotes. That'll give you the username of the person logged into the computer. It may also give you the username of the person logged into your network, depending on how it's set up. If this one's not working for you, there's also a Windows API that you can call that's a little more difficult to set up, but it's again, as far as the API calls are concerned, it's fairly straightforward. It'll just depend on your situation there, what you've got going on. So let's save this, close it. Again, we have to close our database to reload the ribbon, see our changes. All right, so there we go. Now we have our label to the right of our application icon, if you will, and yeah, I have a really complicated user ID on my computer at home. RAY. There you go. So last thing I want to do is dynamically set the visibility of this compact and repair button. In an earlier video, I said that I will often do this for myself. I often will build quite a few forms that I use during development to set up either reference values or other parameters, and I will put code in that will hide those groups or even an entire tab unless the user logged in is using my user ID. And of course I keep my user ID and password to myself so the users can't get to it. So that's what we're going to do in this case. Okay, so let's head over to our useless ribbons form again, bound to our table that holds our XML for our ribbon. And for the compact and repair button, we have visible equal to true. So it's hard-coded to always show. You want to change that so that it calls a VBA method to decide whether to show itself or not. So we use get and a capital V here. Okay, this XML is case sensitive. Get visible. And we're going to copy in, we're going to replace that word true rather with the name of the VBA method that we're going to call. Alright, so I'm going to save this, close it, head over to our VBA. Oops, there we go. And here we have get visible callback. Again, it takes a control as the control that called it, and it passes back reference to visible as a variant. And what I'm doing here is I'm using the same environ method that I used to decide who I was up here, and if I am Ray, or if the person logged in is Ray, I'm going to set visible equal to true, otherwise we'll set it equal to false. Now there are other ways you can use this. You don't necessarily have to just test a username. In other databases I've had user groups, and I've tested the group that the user belonged to decide whether to show or hide something. I've also instituted one where we had security levels, and we would put a number in the tag of controls, and depending upon how high that number was, the user groups had permission to open or see certain numbers or a certain level. So we did a comparison that way. So there's lots of different ways you can use this. Alright, so again we need to close our database and reopen it so that we can reload the ribbon and see our changes. And actually there's not much to see here except that the compact and repair button is still showing because I'm logged in as myself. So that's it for this video. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'll leave comments on other topics you'd like to see videos on, I'll be glad to try and do those. And otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thank you.